Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have a really exciting episode in store for you today where we're going to talk to you about AV over IP, which is a hugely popular category for Key Digital. However, we've heard it before and we'll always hear it in the future. Hey, sometimes the product that you guys are selling might be a little too overkill for my application, right? We have our AV over IP system that you've probably viewed and maybe even worked with already. The IP 822s, 922s, 1022s are 4K AV over IP product. However, that has a lot of connectivity, 4K resolution, control built in, open API, sometimes keyboard, mouse, and audio de-embedding. But some applications just require 1080p video distribution only, right? And sometimes you don't need all of the extra bells and whistles to go along with the product like the 4K AV over IP product. And so we're going to talk to you about those simplified AV over IP distribution systems using our KD IP 1080. As the name implies, the maximum resolution is 1080p here. And the great thing is it's completely scalable because it is AV over IP. So you get to use that network switch as your backbone, or even multiple network switches interconnected by fiber linkings, stacking, if you will, which could be because you have a very large system, or it could even be because you have a whole campus that you need to wire, and each campus, each building has a different network switch. So you could easily expand to these systems as well. You could build them the perfect size every time. So if you only need, say, 5 or 6 video sources throughout the whole system, but you need 95 displays, no problem. Pick up 5 transmitters, 95 receivers, and the appropriate amount of network equipment to accommodate those 100 ports, and you're going to be in good shape. So you could build any kind of system with this. It could be 1x95 if you need it, just like a distribution amplifier, splitter, if you will. You could build that with AV over IP. Just pick up 1 transmitter per source, 1 receiver per display in the IP 1080 system. We call these encoders and decoders in our 4K AV over IP product, but we do call them transmitters and receivers in the 1080p product. So, as I mentioned, campus and multiple buildings, the IP 1080 is going to be really ideal for that because it is such a low bandwidth. You can actually even get longer distance performance out of it, like I mentioned. So those large buildings, digital signage, even a single source going to dozens of displays. Hey, you don't need to add an individual source behind each of those displays if they're all going to show the same thing at the same time. And of course, this application is really good for some bar and restaurants as well. This product, this system is a nice fit for bar and restaurants on a budget because of some of the free control options as well that we provide for this. So, when you are designing these systems, you do need to have specific considerations in mind that will lead you towards this product or perhaps our other AV over IP products, the 4K products that does have that bell and whistles, like I mentioned, right? Because sometimes you need that. What is the maximum resolution? Well, as I said, if 1080p is just fine for you, this is going to be a good product for you. Audio handling. Do you need audio de-embedding? This product does not have it. Our 4K AV over IP products do have it, depending on which models you buy. What are you doing for control? Certain answers will lead you in either direction. The total amount of endpoints, the location of those endpoints. Now, this is going to be important for just your system design as a whole, right? Because this is going over network. You generally know you're working with 100 meters in and out of the network switch. This product actually could go up to 400 feet, not 328 feet, 400 feet. Forget the exact meter measurement on that, but there is a slide that shows us. Do you need to do a video wall? Our other AV over IP system is going to be the proper match for you there. And what network switch do you want to work with? We give you plenty of options as we show you. Now, I keep alluding to another series of AV over IP products. Now, Key Digital has a complete product family of AV over IP that, as of the time of this recording, we've been doing AV over IP for about 7 years now. So we certainly have a wide variety of products that you can choose from with different capabilities. Again, that's why we go over that list of design considerations, and let us know about what you want. You could send those requirements of your system over to our sales team, sales@keydigital.com, and we'll be happy to guide you the correct way with your product selection. So speaking of products, here are the actual models: KD IP 1080TX and KD IP 1080RX. Again, as the name implies, 1080p is your maximum resolution. Transmitters, 1 per video source. Receivers, 1 per video display. The transmitter actually has an HDMI pass-through, so if you do need to connect to a local monitor, or perhaps, like I mentioned, there's no audio de-embedding here, but perhaps you need to go into an HDMI audio amplifier, you could do that through your transmitter side there. They are all PoE powered, but they also have a power connection and include a power supply in the box, which you can use if you're not using a PoE network switch. Here we are, 130 meters in and out of the network switch. So you could actually achieve 800 feet or 260 meters with the network switch in the middle with these products. There's an open API for controlling this that is very, very simple, as we'll show you. And it's all KD app ready as well, which is our free iOS app for controlling the system. So that's a quick look at the product. What do you need to know to get started with the system like this? Well, of course, it goes over your network, okay? And anytime video goes over the network, you're going to be compressing that video just due to the nature of the high bandwidth of video signals now, high definition. If you're doing, well, we all know at this point in time, you could go up to 18 gigabits per second bandwidth over an HDMI cable, but the bandwidth of each of your transmitter streams is going to be approaching 15 megabits per second. That's it at 1080p, less at 720p and 1080i, actually half, so about 7.5 or so. We actually have a document showing you all the bandwidth at each video resolution. And so you calculate how many transmitters you're going to have in your system to measure the maximum bandwidth of your system. This is really the way to do it, because, for example, if you're going to have 100 of these things, then you're going to be looking at over a gigabyte of bandwidth, right? And therefore, then if you do have to go to multiple network switches, which of course you will if you have 100 units, you're going to have to stack it with a fiber. The fiber is going to have to be a 10 gig fiber, right? So that's why you consider these things. Yes, it is a low bandwidth product, so it's not quite as intensive as our 4K AV over IP system, where that bandwidth measurement is very important. With the compression standard, H.264 is how we're squeezing this down, compressing it to send it over a network. Fret not, the quality is great. Who else uses H.264? Netflix, for example. So we're all familiar with the quality that you could get through H.264. But because it is a high compression, it results in that low bandwidth, it does result in a high latency, 400 milliseconds. That's almost half a second behind. So that's another design consideration. If you're doing audio and video through your displays, not a problem. But if you're breaking out the audio from your, let's just say, cable boxes at the front end, and you're breaking out the audio feeding directly into your amplifier, you're going to need an amplifier with some latency adjustments, or DSP with some latency adjustments. Of course, our 4K AV over IP system has a very minimal latency where there's no lip sync detected, no lip sync issues detected at 40 milliseconds versus 400. So again, we give you all these options here, and we're educating you about both products so that you can make the correct choice for your application, for your customer. if you connected every one of these to 48 ports of your network switch at 6 watts per unit, you're not going to max out your PoE allowance on your network switch. And this system does work with Cat 5e and up, whereas our 4K products, you may remember, are for Cat 6 and up. So how AV over IP works is using a technology called multicasting. Not going to go too deep here, I promise, but there's two technologies like this. There's multicasting and unicasting. And as we see when we compare left and right here, the multicast technology, it goes back to what I was mentioning about measuring your bandwidth, right? Every transmitter, you just add that 15 megabits per second at 1080p, okay? If you got 10 transmitters, you're gonna have 150 megabits, right? It has it doesn't matter how many receivers are in your system. Whereas in unicast, if you had one stream and it was going to 2 displays, then you would calculate that as 30 megabits per second. So multicast is much more efficient. You're going to have to use a network switch with IGMP snooping. Because the multicast, it's a broadcast, as the name implies. The IGMP stands for Internet Grouping Management Protocol. It's going to act as the traffic police so that the transmitter's broadcast only goes to the intended recipients, not to any unintended recipients on your network, flooding your network, etc. Now, it's not just does the switch that you want to work with have IGMP, support IGMP, but we do have a list of verified network switches on our website, and you must use one of those switches. We put all these switches through the ringer, we test, we leave them running in a high pressure environment for 2 months in order to pass the test, and then they go on our guide. These are some of the manufacturers, and we give you a lot of choices here. A lot of choices. You know, some people like working with the most expensive switches. Other applications don't have the budget for the most expensive switches. So we give you all these options. And if the model that you would like to work with is not on our list, please reach out to us, and we're going to try to either have you ship us your switch so we could configure that switch for you and even set up your system in our lab and run it with the switch. And in fact, so getting a little ahead of myself. So let's look here at your network switch. Let's say you did not ship it to us at Key Digital. This is where you would just go into this guide here and you'd be able to look at the exact instructions of setting up your network switch. Generally, each guide is about 5 pages long, more or less, and it's mostly pictures, okay? So very easy to follow. You just download it. You just get this guide from our downloads tab of the IP1080TX or RX product page. In fact, this guide is on all of our AV over IP products page. Now, as I mentioned, getting ahead of myself, we also do all of the system configuration for you, the AV over IP system configuration for you in our lab. So when you purchase the product, the system, you're going to also submit this questionnaire. This questionnaire is also found on the downloads form or the downloads tab of our webpage. Fill in the name of each of your sources. Fill in the name of each of your displays, right? Giving it a friendly name, it's going to allow your technicians to open the box and say, oh, I know exactly where to install this. But it's also going to be a big benefit in your Key Digital management software scan and in your Key Digital app, iOS app control interface. And so here's the Key Digital management software. This is what our team uses to configure these systems. Sometimes you'll even need it to add or subtract transmitters or receivers, or edit your system files, change names, etc. We do have the Key Digital management software, again, also available on all the product pages for the AV over IP system. We set the system up. We run it in our lab for 2 days. We make sure everything is working 100% so that when we pack this up, you got the labels on there. It's very clear, very easy for you to know exactly where things get installed, what their IP addresses are, because you've provided it to us, but you know, it's good to have that reminder. And then if we need, on the tech support side, we could log in using the Key Digital management software as well if we need to make any kind of tweaks. When you open the box, you're also going to see this very handy quick setup guide, just 1 page long. And this really just walks you through the steps of installing the system. Configuring your network switch. This is always step number one. If you might have seen it on that slide before. Step number one, underlined and in bold, set up your network switch. Why? Because if you connect your transmitters, connect your receivers all into that network switch without the IGMP enabled properly, well, now you are going to be broadcasting that video stream to not video devices, and that could cause issues on your network. So step one, configure the network switch. Step two, install the transmitters and receivers in their desired location. By the way, we have a shelf mounting system that we often spec, shelf mounting solution that we often spec with these in these systems, and we'll even install the products, mount them with their screws on that shelf, and then you'll just pop the shelf into your rack. Very, very easy. The model on that shelf mount is KD SMS 16. Connect the units into the network switch, connect your PC into the network switch, and run the key digital management software. You add your control interface to the network. So that's our CX800 or MC1000, as we'll show you. And then you're able to control it as desired. So now we're getting into the system integration portion, right? I've mentioned the free app. Here's a look at the interface. Well, you see in the image in the background, you can see those friendly names. So it's not just receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see, this is East 1, East 2, South, the ladies' room, the men's room, the loft, the patio, the sources, DirecTV 1 through 8, the cable 1, 2, Apple, Comcast, the stage cameras, etc. And you can see what each display is viewing as well with in the little blue square there in the top right corner. Now, that is all parsed from the system. The iPad scans the network, it finds a system, and it parses that information. Now, in the foreground of this slide is the presets. You can make presets inside of the free app. This is created, saved, and lives in the iPad itself. So if I have two iPads running the system, iPad A and B, if I create presets using iPad A, they don't show up in iPad B. So they are truly user presets. And those are the features of the free Key Digital app. Now, what if you want to integrate this with one of your control systems, be it our Compass control system, or a third-party control system, or even our free app, okay? Now you need a control interface. The control interface, we see it over here. Let me see if I could zoom in for us. Here we are. And we see it where the control interface here, the control interface, it has, using Key Digital Management software, our team, or if you need to update your system, you will load a switch configuration file into this control interface. Now there's a file that lives in here, in this one box, instead of dozens and dozens of boxes. The control system, the app, communicates one-to-one to this interface, and it makes it very, very reliable, very, very easy compared to other AV over IP systems out there where you have to know a huge string for controlling the system, where you perhaps are trying to communicate with each receiver independently, one by one by one. All you need is one IP address. All you need is, point-to-point communication. And it makes the string, and you could send a simple string to that control interface that is the exact same switching command as all of our matrix switchers for the past 13 plus years at Key Digital. SPO-X SIY, signal processor, output X, select input Y, with X being your display number, Y being your source number. And so you need that control interface for all of your systems. And here are the control interface options for you. KD CX800, the smaller of the two options, and KD MC1000, the larger of the two options. I personally prefer the CX800 if we're just talking about it as a control interface, right? So the app is coming in and communicating with it, or a third-party control system is communicating with it to control the AV over IP system. We look at the comparison here. Both of them work the same way. They could receive IP strings or even RS-232, even IR strings, honestly, to control the AV over IP system. So they accept the strings, the switching command I just told you, and it broadcasts that to the intended recipient, right? Or to the necessary recipient over the network. The CX800 is smaller. I try to make the two product comparisons accurate. If you look at the LAN ports, they should be about the same size. And it's accurate. The CX800 is much smaller than the MC1000. Both of them are small. They're not rack mountable products, though. Okay, they're both too small for being like rack mount. Okay, the CX800 is PoE powerable, which is one of the reasons I like it. Also includes a power supply. On the CX800, there are 2 LAN ports. It can act like a 2-port switch for you if you need. So if you only have 1 port left on your network switch, you can feed it into this, and you still can connect network into another device. I also like that the CX800 supports our key code open API. So any control system can actually communicate to the CX800 and tell it, hey, you, IR, or port number 1, you're going to be IR and you're going to send this command, or you're going to be RS-232 on port 2, and you're going to send this command at this baud rate. But the MC1000 is more useful if you are running compass control and if you need more than 3 ports to control IR RS-232 devices. If you're controlling devices over the network for compass, you don't even need ports for that. But that's when the MC1000 comes in play. And both of these products, controllers, have the control interface functionality for an IP 1080 AV over IP system covered for you. So let's look at some of the diagrams then. Well, here's a matrix, AV over IP video matrix, 4 sources, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42 displays. So this fits on a single network switch, as we see here in the picture. We have our control interface that the free app is communicating with, and perhaps even the third-party control system if needed. This looks like it could be a nice solution for a large venue like an arena, where you have your camera feed and your digital signage, you have PC, or some kind of venue like that, a large venue. And, you know, it's simple. You just pick up 1 transmitter per video source. That's 4 in this count, and 1 receiver per display. That's 42 in this count, and 1 control interface. Here is a digital signage application where you take your digital signage player and you're sending it to 10, 20, 30, 47, 47 displays. And that fills our 48 port switch, which we could go beyond that if we need. But because there's no routing, because it's just every display is viewing that same source, you don't even need a control interface. You don't need to reroute any signals because there's only 1 source. Here's a system that we're showing open API control system expansion. So as I mentioned, the CX800, you could actually send a string over IP to the CX800, and then it'll convert that to IR RS-232 for you. So here we see a system where they have 12 sources and 12 displays, and they could route that individually, and the third-party control system can communicate directly to the CX800 and tell it to send IR to the TVs. And because the CX800 is so small, it can be conveniently located in each of these clusters of displays as we've pictured there. The IP 1080s is also possible to also support point-to-point HDMI extension. So actually, when you order this, again, you let us know about it. And if you're doing point-to-point, basically the setup is minimal because they don't even need an IP address. And in fact, they are set to channel 0, which indicates it's not over the network. And then you could actually go 400 feet. And sometimes people need to go a long way over a single cat wire. And this is a good cost-effective solution of doing that. Or if you need to go even further, put a network switch in the middle. A small network switch is fine from our list of verified network switches. And now you're able to do up to 800 feet, 242 meters in total if you needed. So there you go. So there's some out of the box ways and some of the, more traditional ways of using the KDIP 1080, 1080p AV over IP system. And if you have examples or if you have inquiries or would like to know about your usage of our system and make sure that it's all within the realms of our system's capabilities, well, we have a full product line of AV over IP products. And so our sales team can set you up with that. That's sales@keydigital.com is where you're going to want to send those inquiries.